run the floor. Bobby Marks with SGA now locked up long term. Is Oklahoma City in position to keep its big three together this time?
They are. They've got a surplus of potentially 4 first-round picks next year. They've done a terrific job of staggering the contracts over the next few years here. Certainly keep an eye on Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, but yes, they are in control to keep this team together.
All right, Tim Bontemps. The Nuggets added Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jonas Valanciunas to their offseason haul yesterday. Should Nikola Jokic be happy with Denver's move?
Yeah, I mean, the Nuggets got some additional depth pieces. They have they added Cam Johnson to trade with Michael Porter Jr. the other day. They gave Jonas Valanciunas to give them a backup center. They had Tim Hardaway Jr. on a minimum. These are some veteran depth pieces. We'll see how much it can help, but for a team that had no depth, they at least have some.
And Brian Windhorst, the Bucks and Miles Turner have agreed to a deal, and Milwaukee's getting rid of Damian Lillard. Do you like the surprising moves Milwaukee made yesterday?
I mean, I like the audacity. I like the creativity. It's pretty remarkable. I don't think anybody saw this coming. Miles Turner is an excellent player, but I'm not sure it moves the needle on the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And now, instead of a stopgap to replace Damian Lillard, they need a full-time point guard to replace Damian Lillard, and right now they don't have it.
So let's take a little bit of a deeper look at what Milwaukee did. Obviously, Wendy, right, it's a win-now move, but because of what they did with Lillard, can you take us through just sort of the impact it has moving forward?
So they have been contenders for about 6 or 7 years now with Giannis, and they've had really unfortunate luck with injuries over the last few years. Giannis has been injured in some playoff series, and then this last year, tragically, Dame Lillard tore his Achilles in the playoff series. And they have exhausted all of their resources during that time. They have traded away all their draft picks. They have used up all their cap space. And yet there was still some concern that Giannis might want to ask out of the franchise. And so their reaction to that was to start borrowing from Peter to pay Paul in 2028, 29, and 30 by putting Dame Lillard on a wave and stretch where they will now pay the remaining $113 million of his salary, $23 million at a time over the next 3 years. This was never envisioned this way when this provision was put into the collective bargaining agreement. It was meant to help shorter-term situations, and now this is going to be like an albatross around their neck. They don't think it today, but I promise you, in 2030, the Bucks fans are going to have a party when this is off their books, because this is going to end up being a problem for years into the future. And let me tell you where they had a party yesterday, Dan. They had a party in Portland, because the Portland Trail Blazers own the Bucks first-round draft pick in 28, 29, and 30, and their long-ago franchise player, Dame Lillard, is going to help pull that team down and make those picks even better.
A lot of layers to these moves that happened basically right after we went off the air yesterday. I know all you guys were calling around the league to get reaction. Bontemps, what kind of stuff were you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Brian summed this up pretty well in talking to one executive yesterday. They said this is the kind of thing you come up with when you're sitting in a boardroom in July trying to figure out what to do with your team to dig out of the hole you're in, but that in a couple of years you're going to look back on it and say, what did we do, right? And as Brian said, when you have a $22 million dead cap hit on your books for the next 5 years, that's not something you can get away from. You can't trade it. You can't buy it down later. That's just stuck there. So this team is going to be stuck with limited flexibility going into, all the way through the rest of the decade. Now, if it keeps Giannis Antetokounmpo in Milwaukee for this year and beyond, then you look at it and say, well, it's the cost of doing business. He is the greatest player to play in this franchise's history. The longer you keep him around, the better. But if somehow it doesn't keep him around, or if it's only a short-term fix, this is going to be something that's going to linger for a very long time. And while Miles Turner is a good player and a guy who fits very well with Giannis Antetokounmpo as a rim-protecting center who can also shoot threes, it's a rare commodity, he also doesn't replace the 24 points a game Damian Lillard scored last year for the Bucks. That is a hole they still have even after this.
Yeah, you say short-term fix, Tim McMahon. Damian Lillard was not supposed to be that, and he ended up only being there 2 years. So what did yesterday's moves tell you about the state of the Milwaukee Bucks franchise?
Yeah, this is a desperation move, and it's an admission that the Damian Lillard trade was a complete disaster. And obviously, there's unfortunate circumstances with Dame tearing his Achilles, but even before that, you go all in on a superstar like that, to keep Giannis happy, to try to reopen that championship window. It doesn't produce a single playoff series win. And look, they haven't paid off the picks on the Drew Holiday trade, which, by the way, did help deliver a championship. They flipped Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard. Now they owe Dame $22.5 million for the next 5 years. By the way, that's the point 5 years from now when they'll finally pay off the picks from the Dame deal. So they're out money, they're out picks. Miles Turner's a nice fit. He's a nice player. He's a moderate upgrade over Brook Lopez, but this does not vault the Bucks back into the championship contention picture.
Yeah, and I want to get to that, certainly, Bobby, but I also want to ask you, as somebody with so much front office experience, what do these next few years now look like if you're the Milwaukee Bucks front office as a result of the financial impact of this move yesterday and the draft pick situation that Tim was just talking about?
Well, usually you look at it in a 3-year window, Dan. I think Milwaukee's looking at it right now in a 1-year window here as far as trying to get Giannis as far as to commit long term, and all indications are is that yes, he's still on board here. It's kind of like trading future draft picks, but the financial version, basically by doing this waive and stretch provision. And there are severe implications similar to trading future picks when you have a $23 million dead cap hit. That thing is not going away forever for the next 5 years. But for Milwaukee, it's all about the now. We'll worry about 2029, 2030 later.
So do you think, Bobby, that they've done enough to convince Giannis to stay?
Well, they've been aggressive. You know, they didn't take the last couple of days off here. They brought back some of the old and some of the new when you look at how the roster was brought back with Gary Trent Jr. and Bobby Portis, and they do this Miles Turner and signing and Gary Harris here. I do think they're in a similar position than they were a year ago here, kind of in that middle of the Eastern Conference. The big question, Dan, is who's running point guard? Like for me, that's going to be the biggest question moving forward as far as how did they go out and address the point guard position.
The Bucks currently have the 8th best odds to win the East. I think that, while the odds aren't always perfect, I think that sums up where Milwaukee sits. They have a ton of work to do to just get into contention in the East, let alone contention to win a title, which is what Giannis Antetokounmpo has said. He wants to win multiple titles in his career. Even after this move, they're very far away from it.
Yeah, and McMahon, I know obviously what you said earlier about the moves Milwaukee made and what the impact is of the Lillard trade and how damaging that is. But when you look at Milwaukee right now, they're making win now moves. Are they? Do they look to you like a win now team?
I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're a second-round playoff team, which puts them exactly in for the last couple. You know, you ask, hey,